Okay, this is the March 3rd, 2015 City Council meeting where now Dale Rowley is going to speak again. Oddly enough, a couple weeks before, I had sent him an email asking him for sandbags because with all the illegal snow piling this winter, that winter, and we had plenty of it, I thought the spring melt was going to take out Seaview Terrace for sure. He told me that he had bags, but he didn't have sand, and maybe Public Works could give me some. What a joke. I also identified problems on Seaview Terrace. A huge boulder is getting ready to fall in that's going to block the stream, and a tree is ready to come down. And now he's before City Council to try and tell them that they need to start developing a plan. They still won't put Seaview Terrace in a mitigation plan, and watch Hurley start getting really upset that City Council doesn't have any say as to when an emergency happens. You know, he wants to be the director to say who gets saved, and Seaview Terrace is definitely not on his list, and that is what he's getting at.
Right along. 10B. Request from Waldo County Emergency Office to use the old runway at the airport as a staging area in the event of a major disaster.
Dale Rowley is here from the County of Waldo Emergency Management Office. And
yes.
Welcome, Dale.
Resident of Winterport. I'm not sure if you needed that or not, but what we're looking at here is if we had some sort of a major disaster, we would be getting in resources from FEMA, from donated materials. A lot of it might be coming in by tractor trailer truck or box truck, those type of things. And we need to find some place where we can secure that material and then get it broken down and distributed out to the residents and the communities. We're looking for a place to be able to do that. A place that a lot of is used quite often around the country is airports. And we're looking at utilizing the portion of the airport that isn't utilized for either storage or aircraft or air transport, anything like that. It would be basically.
I'm going to fast forward through this.
And this at the end, there's a road at the last two structures, trucks and everything else to move up. We can. I don't see a need for it. I think we would basically do it as a tabletop discussion exercise and a site survey type.
Mike?
is there electric on that end of the?
I don't think so, but the other thing that we would bring in would be generators.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay. We added B1 to the agenda.
B1 I actually put in part of C, but part of there's a relationship between Waldo County Emergency Management and the different municipalities in Waldo County. And in certain circumstances, an incident can be so big that it can be beyond the resources of a community or the connectivity with the community. And this is an incident management support agreement where a municipality like Belfast can work with the county to have them provide emergency incident management services in the middle of a big problem.
What's key here is our incident management personnel would not come in and take over.
Right.
They would come in and provide additional manpower and support for that. Your police chief or fire chief would still be what we refer to as the incident commander. We would come in and assist with logistics, with communications, feeding, planning, those type of things. What the agreement really does is takes care of the liability issues and the workers' comp issues and how to notify the team and those type of things are things that are put into place beforehand.
Right.
And we have this agreement with all the towns in the county.
I'm going to ask the council before we're done to authorize to sign this so we can get that done. But just, can we go into 10C a little bit?
Yes.
We do have an emergency operations plan here for the city. I attached it. It's on the website. The county helps us develop these plans, and one of the things that we've discussed in this chamber before is that if you get a big emergency, it's sometimes hard for the elected officials to play a significant role or an appropriate role or be involved in making big decisions. And do you have any suggestions or thoughts or ideas about that at all?
Of course, there's any type of disaster, there's the before and the after. The before piece is what's really critical for a lot of elected officials. Making sure that there's a focus on preparedness with your departments that, that part of your community. Make sure that there's appropriate funding or other types of resources, staffing, those type of things. That you have an emergency plan, that you have an emergency operations center, making sure that those things take place. And then being the cheerleader, encouraging the public to become prepared. The number one piece that we have difficulties in any type of emergency is dealing with a very large population that's unprepared. Whether it's power outages or
Flooding.
destruction of buildings or roads that are closed down, those type of things.
Flooding.
So just being that piece. During the response, there is a component for elected officials. Typically in a municipal or county emergency operations center, in state for that matter, we would have a policy group. And that policy group is typically at the state level, it's the governor. At the county level, it's the county commissioners. Of course, at the municipal level, it's councilors or selectmen. And their primary role would be, if there's things outside of normal bounds that your fire chief, your police chief, your town manager or city manager would have for authorities, it would be up to you to delegate those authorities to them. Maybe you don't have something in place for curfews, if you need to do that, or ordering of evacuations. It would be the authority of the city council or selectmen that would make that determination and give that authority to the police chief or whomever. And then the other piece there is the funding piece. There are going to be things in some disasters that cost a lot more money than what you have in your budgets or even in reserve accounts, and it might be up to the city councilors or the town selectmen to make a determination on additional funding. And then the last thing I'd like to add is, again, that cheerleader role. Rudy Giuliani was a perfect example during 9/11 of someone who stepped up to the plate and gave confidence to the people of New York City during that terrible ordeal. The mayor of New Orleans did not do a very good job during Katrina. And that's another key role for the mayor or city council, would be to provide that focus with the community, to talk to the residents, to let them know what's going on, bring up your police chief and fire chief and let them brief what they've accomplished, but kind of take that as a leadership type role. And that's some of the key things. I do have some handouts here I'd like to hand out. One of them is put out by the State Emergency Management folks on Are You Ready for Elected Officials? And then the other one is a class that we actually teach called Emergency Management for Senior Officials. And this is a checklist that goes along with that. And that espouses a lot more on what I just basically brought up. Basically being the leadership role, the cheerleader role, the public affairs role, and then providing those additional resources, whether it be authorities or funding or whatever. Calling for volunteers to help. Those are the type of things that are huge. Because your fire chief and your police chief and your EMA director are going to be very busy with putting out the wet stuff, the red stuff on the wet stuff, and all those type of things.
So I would ask for a motion to authorize the city to enter into the incident management support agreement with Waldo County we talked about.
Mike.
The reason we're discussing this is because we had this on an agenda, I can't remember, it was almost a year ago, am I correct?
June.
No, it was March. You're wrong.
It's just kind of like, here's this thing, and we never discussed it, honestly. I don't think anybody really looked at it. And just as it was after we signed it, actually, I started looking at it and I was like, oh, the city council and the mayor is not in on this, period. And I strongly disagree with it, and I'm also, I'm willing to let it go by, but we need to amend it to include elected officials somehow being in the mix here somewhere.
Page 12, bottom of the page.
I'm looking at page 4.
Try page 12.
Of course, it's different for
Emergency public information. Organization and assignment of responsibilities.
it's a little little different for a city than it is for one of the small towns. The small towns, they don't have managers, they don't have professional staff.
This
The
is important.
selectmen or the elected officials are taking a much bigger role than because they don't have the support staff, the professional staff.
At City Hall with the media center.
See, that's
Joe is
important.
Well, he's referred to as the city.
Dale's trying to tell them that they don't really need to be involved because we're a city. That's why we have a city manager, we have a fire chief, we have director of public works, we have a chief of police. The smaller towns have maybe one person in charge of everything. So city council has to jump in and help with the emergency relief, actually getting their hands in there. So Hurley wants to get in here just to give orders, not to save Seaview.
The manager, he doesn't get initials.
Well,
And
I'm
it
more
talks
concerned, I'm
about-
more concerned with page 4. And I see that there. But I want to see here a role for the city council. And the
Well,
mayor.
page 12 is the expansion of 4 under city manager on page 4.
So I see either a member of the board of select or a volunteer who is selected to be public information officer. Is that the one you're talking about on page 12?
The whole bottom half of the page.
Yeah, that's it. Again, the following city officials may be tasked during a community emergency or disaster, and I don't see any role for elected officials, and I want to see them in here, because I can imagine situations that I do not want to imagine city officials completely being locked out of the room, and I could see that happening under this scenario.
What I recommend is you take a look at those handouts
Yeah.
and from that gather what you believe that component would be. And then you could, put that into your plan. It's your plan.
Yeah, exactly.
It's how you want to operate.
And I
You
did.
could probably tell us your opinion of what you feel that should be right now.
I'm saying that when I see city manager assumes responsibility for the overall city response and recovery operation, the city manager is completely set up for everything on this, and I think it's I think it knocks the council and the mayor out of that position, and it also disregards the city charter, and I appreciate Dale's point, and I think he's absolutely right. This is our plan, and I want to see city council and mayor involved in some aspects of this. And I don't expect to be standing around that councilors should be ordering the fire department around or anything. But I think we absolutely have to be involved.
Okay, we have a lot of discussion here. Neil, you're next.
I pretty much in agreement with Mike, and you may mention, for example, of setting of curfews would be an example of the kind of thing that I think, that would be a decision I think would have to be made, should be made properly by council. And so there are different aspects. I do think there should be a role. With all due respect to all the other people who would be assigned, we are the elected officials to represent people of the city, and we should have a role. Well, what exactly that is, we would
They
have
represent
to
the
define, but
1%.
there should be a role, absolutely.
Dale, you're right. I view, in terms of your presentation of how it should sort itself out, I do view Rudy Giuliani's role as more than a cheerleader in 9/11 and the incidents and all that. I view the recent blizzards in Boston, the mayor was the one speaking to the press, and I think that's what Mike is talking about, emergency management, having a mayor or a council person be an elected official. I know that the entire Boston metropolitan area viewed the new mayor as his first crisis and emergency, and how did he do and all of that. I mean, so I think that's the point he's trying to make. I'm looking at page 8 on the organization and assignment of responsibilities, and to me, Mike's got a point. The city manager exercised broad control over emergency operations. The councilmen provide guidance on policy and approve information for the public. It's just a little too vague, I think, for me as to what that all means. but then if you go down the paragraph below, when directed by the city manager or the EM director, etc., and then all of the things, the following city officials and volunteers may be included, and councilors are not involved in that. So I don't know if that's what you're trying to indicate, Mike, but I hear what you're saying. It's like, if it's an emergency, people are going to ask or want to know that everything's cool, and they'll get it from you and they'll get it from other people. But if somebody from the council speaks, I don't know, Community 7, I'm trying to imagine an emergency of the magnitude where this would be even happening, but you never know.
Could be a hurricane.
Forest fire, could be anything. But the reality is, I think people look for assuredness from their leaders, their elected leaders. I think that's what.
Seaview's dead.
It does seem to me, though, that if we were to be essentially involved in an emergency situation, that we, like most, if all, not all of these other people on the list, should have appropriate emergency training so that we understand the methodologies, nuances, vocabulary, and so on, so that we can be effective team members rather than leading a charge in the wrong direction. So I think that it would call for us getting appropriate training. And I do think that I would want to be part of that team.
Yeah, we've got a program called the 402 course that's for elected officials.
Okay, Joe, then Neil.
No, wait.
Well, I was just going to say, the thing is, when you get into decisions like evacuation, curfews, any emergency management, there's a triage aspect. You know, what neighborhood gets relief first? Where do the first supplies go?
Bingo.
That sort of thing. And there are going to be people who aren't going to be happy with the response. And they're going to want elected officials to answer for
No,
those
I
responses. I don't think elected officials should be held, you know, it's these counselors. If a disaster is held is poorly, and people are unhappy with the way the city handles it, the people are not going to be firing the police chief and the fire department. They're going to be firing their city councilors, and I don't feel we should be put in a position where we're going to accept responsibility for things that we have no element of control in.
You know, when we got this that night, we had never had a discussion about it. We had never discussed who would be responsible on any of these things. And I can tell you, I think had we done that, we would not be having this discussion tonight. We would have worked out, you know, some form of inclusion for elected officials. And, you know, to John's point, I can tell you, I'm not going to get in the way of a fire department guy or a highway department guy, or most things. But what I see here is, if this was the United States, there would be no role for the President of the Congress. And that's called a military state. And I'm not going to sign off on that. I'm not going to support it. I want to see something for elected officials in there.
Joe.
Why don't I take this material that Dale kindly brought to us tonight, and why don't I draft something for your consideration?
And I think that would be wise. And I
That's
think
perfect.
we should all read it ourselves in the interim.
Okay.
Thank you. Dale, thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
And possibly you could provide Joe with a little information about that 402
Yep.
training
Yep.
for those who might be interested.
I would love to see that, you know, to have a workshop on that, and to, you know, even in particular, you know, to focus on especially what not to be involved in.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, so now I don't recall hearing a meeting where this letter that Joe wrote up to amend this contract that they signed with EMA was ever brought up in a meeting. And I will never be able to get a hold of it. So anyway, I'm going to go on to the next meetings where Heil Hurley here is trying to, is suddenly concerned for Seaview Terrace because we are now going to be, we are predominantly a flood zone A. Bye.